Here we go again. Hello, Alexis. You doing?
Stefano, how you doing?
Okay, I'm doing fine, doing fine. Yeah, it's been a while we didn't make this thing, so let's
Yeah, we've been
start at that. Yeah,
interrupted by illnesses and other work, but here we are.
yeah. Here we are. So you introduced the topic for today, and I 100% agree. It's one of the hottest topic of the moment, and the hottest topic of the moment is pie.
Yes.
Yeah, and so yeah. By the way, I suggest everybody to take a look at this video. This is really inspiring, and it's really close to what I wanted to see before. This is like the introduction of why Mario Zechner made Pi.
Well, we
Uh,
should probably tell people who are not hyper online exactly what pi is. So let,
exactly.
let, let me
Let's
let me
do.
give a little background on my encounter with it, and then we can share our thoughts. And I think I've worked with it more than you have, so maybe
Yeah.
you can ask me the questions that you and everyone else might want to know. So my first encounter with pi is when I was working with OpenClaw, because one of the features OpenClaw provides is a ready-to-go sort of text interface that you can use in the console to chat with your agent. Just like you would use Claude Code to chat with Claude or Codex to chat with the GPT models within a console. And if you look at the OpenClaw code, or if you encounter bugs in the OpenClaw code, which you're trying to debug, which is what happened to me, you discover that there's this thing pi inside the OpenClaw code. So part of OpenClaw is the the Pi code base or an adaptation of the Pi code base, and that's the code that provides that text user interface and other parts of the kind of agent runner. And if you go look, you can find that that Pi code lives on a separate code base. It's not within OpenClaw. It's off of I think Pi Mono, or maybe they've changed it now because of um, business
Yeah, something
structure.
happening in the company. He
Yeah,
like joined
business business
a little
structure
later.
alterations. So basically, if you use Claude in the terminal, you probably use Claude Code. If you use OpenAI's models in the terminal, you probably use Codex. But you could instead use Pi. It's a open source uh, harness, command line harness, which you can use for any of the models, technically. And it's different from the ones that you get from the vendors, from the model vendors. That's what it is. And I've actually been using it as my, main harness for the last few weeks at least, maybe a little longer. So I have opinions about it. Maybe you have questions. Is
Yeah,
that a good summary? Does that
man,
capture the essence of it, Stefano?
fun stuff, Alexis, is that a few months ago, you were maybe early in the development of Sparky, something like that. And you were probably just wrote your blog post about the fact that the coding agents love the terminal and the bash is so
Hmm.
important. And you mentioned Pi to me because you probably already had you jump into the open cloud thing since the beginning. And you say, "Oh, I really like Pi because it's super minimal. It just have only like three function plus bash."
Yeah.
And it was like at the beginning it was so weird, but at the end of the day, just getting back to the fact that yeah, once bash is all you need, is unlike porting Mario and he's this very presentation is really introducing something that you go stick to the basics and let the model act in some fundamental way with simple, well-known, reliable tools instead of constructing too much like complicated abstraction on top
Right.
of that.
So it's
It is really interesting.
so I'd say there's three senses in which pi is minimal. So yeah, I wrote that blog post a while ago about why Claude Code won, and my point was it won because it used the Unix command line tools, and in particular, it benefited from the fact that the Unix command line tools are composable and interoperable, meaning you can use Bash and you can use the set of GNU utils that people take for granted when they use Bash. Um, and one of the thing one the first way in which pi is minimal is that out of the box when you use pi, it provides a very small number of tools to the AI. There's I think like read, and then there's a bash tool to use bash, and I think there's like an edit tool, and maybe there's like one more. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a list directory, but that's basically it. So pi kind of embraces that idea that the model doesn't need, you know. 20 carefully crafted tools that come from your MCP. It just needs like bash and something else. So that's the first way in which Pi is minimal. The second way in which Pi is minimal is that if you install Pi and run it, it doesn't provide many of the features that Claude Code and Codex provide out of the box. You need to sort of add them yourself. So, for instance, like out of the box, if you ask Claude Code or Codex to, search the web and research a topic for you, they already have an opinion about what web search tool they're going to use, and they'll use that, and then they'll have a kind of a answer that's grounded in web research. Pi out of the box doesn't, integrate with one of the web search providers, so that's like a choice you need to make, like setting it up. That's one example, but there are other ways in which it
Yeah,
doesn't provide.
even one more important is that like the way to deal with the context compaction, that they don't get that Pi is not opinionated about that. It's your responsibility to do that. It's
Well,
your
no,
responsibility.
I disagree there. It has its own compaction system.
It's
So
really
so
minimal stuff. He discussed about this in this very video and like in the
yeah,
thing.
it's minimal, and you can see what it is.
And
So a question you might ask is like, well, is it different in a significant way from the vendor harnesses? That's a question I've been asking myself, and the answer is it's hard to know because the vendor harnesses are a little secretive
you
about
don't
how they
know.
work. So unless you put in the time to do some reverse engineering, you don't, really have a clear vision of what they're doing.
Yeah, you
But let
don't
me
need to
finish my,
wait
my,
for
my
someone else to leak the source code. It just like the
yeah.
source code is just there. And I think maybe
Well,
the best.
Codex is open source. To be fair, Codex is open source, so you can look at the source code if you want to. Um, and we can talk about that later. I've done that in my work with Pi. But just to finish, this kind of connects to the third way in which Pi is minimal, which is first way was uh, what I said, it only provides a minimal number of tools. Second way is it's minimal and it provides a very basic set of features to the user, as opposed to tools to the AI. The third way is its entire philosophy is built around extensibility, so that Pi itself is a minimal core with a plug-in system that allows you to connect things to it. So the effect of this is when you're in Pi, you can like ask the AI to like add a new feature to Pi, and the Pi is well enough documented that the AI can usually vibe code a feature and then hot reload it, and then it's working on the spot
Yeah.
right there. So that's the kind of the third type of minimalism. It's a minimalism around architectural core for the purpose of extensibility.
Yeah, and I really like this idea that you provide a general like framework where you let the AI extend itself, but the basic framework is sort of minimal. And probably I would say that the best quote of this whole like talk is about you should know your tools to
Yeah,
really be an engineer in this moment is all about really deeply understanding and controlling your tools because it's
yeah,
now a way where you know this abstraction level. This is the coding agent abstraction level. And when you want to do something, your mind should think and say, oh, I have these simple primitives. I have these hooks. He has a way more hooks where you can inject code or things happening with respect to other coding agent. And it's designed, it's more like a library for coding agent, much more than like a coding agent itself. And I
yeah.
really like this philosophy. And
By the way, you're still sharing the screen, which is just the YouTube
oh
channel.
yeah, sorry.
I don't know if you want to be sharing that.
No, no, no,
Um,
no. Oh yeah, sure. Like go for it. Let me like stop sharing. There we go.
um, well, yeah. So
It's your turn. Mhm.
let me know if you have some questions, but because I've been using it a bit more. But let me just add one thought on that. So I've been meaning to write a blog post, it hasn't quite come together on it. But here's the thought in a nutshell. Uh, because Pi is minimal in this way, it doesn't start with a lot of features. And because Pi is designed not to automatically put a lot of stuff into the context window for you, it does have a learning curve. Like it sort of requires you to make choices about what it does when it interacts with the AI, and therefore it requires you to develop opinions, about how you want it done. And I think about this in a very general way. Like in general, it's bad to be required to learn things. Like most knowledge is not worth having. Like you, like I don't really want to understand the x86 instruction set in
I got
detail
opinion
unless I'm
about this.
working on a, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if I were an infinite being, I would love to learn everything in the world, but I could, count on my fingers and toes the number of decades I have left. So like I don't want to learn everything in the world. It's silly, right?
Yeah,
But
but
I do want to learn
think about
things
another
that
thing.
are,
Let
yeah.
me give you an opinion
What?
about why sometimes you want people have some basic understanding what you're doing. Like think about driving a car. Even if in the future we're gonna have like super automatic cars that you say, take me there,
Mm.
and it will, a powerful tool like a car need you to have an
Yeah.
understanding, not
Oh, I
being a
disagree
mechanic,
completely.
and having an understanding of what it means to drive a car.
I
And I
disagree completely.
I love
I
it.
drive I drive an automatic. I've never learned a manual transmission. I never will. It doesn't bother me. But let me say
Yeah,
why.
you're American. I know. I started with
Yeah,
with clutch.
but let me say why. Like the reason is that I never need to do anything with a car where I actually need to understand things below the abstraction layer of an automatic transmission. If I were in some area with really complicated hills and I was doing some very fancy racing, yeah, I'd love to learn how to operate a manual transmission. But for like my usage environment, that level of abstraction is a kind of academic luxury to learn. It doesn't actually provide you. And
Wait,
so
wait, wait,
here,
wait.
so here's the difference. Here's the difference. Where we're at right now with using AIs is not in the automatic transition phase
Exactly.
because nobody has figured out yet what is the right thing to put in the context window to get the most like pragmatic value out of these tools. Um, Not only have people not figured out what they should put into it, the tools we use are kind of hiding what's put in there because like, Claude Code
That
doesn't
is
show
the
you.
point.
So
That is the
we're
point.
we're in a
Right.
domain right now where there's a lot of value from knowing how to like operate the manual transmission because no one knows how to make an automatic transmission, really. But people are selling you automatic transmission cars
Exactly. They got
but
the
before
narrative
yeah,
of the full automatic
before that's
self-driving
appropriate.
car
Before that's
without
appropriate.
understanding how to do
So
it. Yeah.
my take on Pi is very like somewhat minimal and therefore somewhat manual, and that forces you to learn things. But at this point, in April in 2026, the things it's forcing you to learn are the things that you should be learning, right? Because that's the cutting edge of how to use these tools well. So I don't think it's good because uh, I have no sense of practicality and I want to learn everything under the sun. I think it's good because this is stuff worth learning. So if a tool like requires me to learn it and then lets me benefit from learning it, then it's a good tool. And I can't resist making another point here, which is that Pi is a lot like Emacs, right? Um, not because, not in necessarily in that you need to understand like how your text editor works. You don't for most purposes, but in the extensibility structure. The only other piece of software I know that I can sit down in front of, ask an AI to develop a new feature for the software, and within like 5 minutes, it's installed and working without me even restarting the app is Emacs. Emacs, or I guess you could say the console in general, because I can vibe out a like shell script and be using it 5 minutes later. But the only other thing that's not the console, that's actually like a kind of more integrated environment is Emacs. Um, so
Yeah,
it reminds
I
me of
love this one. Alexis, we should make like an Emax-o-meter stuff to count the number of times you mentioned. I love it.
yeah, well, you can't escape who you are.
But it's yeah, I agree 100% with this point of view in the fact that you're learning a generic tool that is meant for you to do things. It's okay, let me this is kind of bold statement, but like that all the industry in the world runs on Excel. And I ask myself a lot of times why every company, every individual one relies on some critical Excel file that everybody knows they should not do that.
Yeah.
And the only answer that I gave myself is that the Excel is is a some tool that give you the agency to do stuff with data. It's the thing that empower people, and people learn how to use it, and people actually feels in control of what is happening because they're using Excel. And so, no matter what fancy dashboard you create for them, oh, is there a way to export this in Excel? Because they want to tinker,
Yeah,
to
I mean, to be
do the
honest, I don't
stuff.
think it's puzzling. Like all the world runs on Excel because Excel is a superior programming environment to actual programming
Yeah.
environments. Right?
Okay, okay.
If you take into account how hard it is to learn and then how much value you get out of like your effort and things like data visibility, like normal programming environments show you how the logic moves, but they don't show you how the data moves. Like Excel shows you the
Exactly.
data, which is often what you care about and want to build an intuition for.
So
So I think
like
if you
these
do
kind of generic
a
tools,
holistic evaluation, like Excel is just better than programming environments, and programmers should think on that fact.
for data is like the best thing to interact, to live, put your hands on data. When you have a table structure,
Yeah,
is
of
the only
course.
way you can do it. And
Where
so I
I
think
think we're
that
past 15 minutes. So where do you want to go with pi? Because I
we're
think
almost
we've gone.
there. Yeah, we got the 15 minutes there. But yeah, I think like the pie is going to be something that give you agency and let you customize it and do the thing you need, not the thing it has been designed for. And so like
Yeah.
OpenFlow
No,
itself is an
yeah.
example using a coding agent to do maybe not only a coding agent. So
Yeah,
like,
so I'll just give you some quick examples because I think we're
sure.
over time here, but like how I've like modified pi. So um basic modification, I have a command that shows me exactly what's in the context window, like a context window budget. It just shows the layers, like this much is going for the system prompt, this much is user inputs, this much is assistant outputs, this much is tool call outputs. Not complicated, but like informative. I realized like what's not surprising after the fact, which is that the lion's share of the context window is always just tool call outputs. That's where all the tokens are getting spent, like interpreting those. The second one, um, I've like felt like I've noticed for a long time that Codex is much better at compaction than Claude Code. It's one of the ways in which it's better. So GPT 5.4 with Codex is much better. But it's a little mysterious why. And what uh, makes the mystery even more suggestive is that OpenAI has a remote compaction endpoint, which is what the Codex CLI uses. And the remote compaction endpoint, you give it your context window, it gives you back the compacted output, but it gives it to you back encrypted as an encrypted blob. And then when you're continuing, the CLI is saying like, here's the prefix of my context, and it just gives the encrypted blob. So you can't actually see
Okay.
what they're doing. And so that made me wonder if they're using some like super secret, clever compaction into latent space rather than just compacting into text. And maybe that's why Codex is so
That
good at
would be
compaction.
interesting. Like,
Right. So
yeah,
I built a
proof in a
Pi
paper.
extension. So I built a Pi extension that modifies Pi to exactly reproduce Codex's compaction behavior
Oh, to send the
by
state to their
yeah,
server. So
because it's
yeah,
not a secret, it's a public endpoint you can use. So if you're using Pi with an OpenAI model, then it will use the exact same logic that's used by Codex for
yeah.
compaction. And does that logic have some secret sauce in it? I don't know. I haven't benchmarked it, but at least I don't need to worry I'm missing something. Um,
That like
and I also built like,
thing.
tools for Emacs and stuff like that. But
But that's an opportunity to learn something, like tinkering with like with the context, like at the context compaction stuff. We know that it's just like eventually kind of text file with like multiple people's writing, like the tool is writing, the user, the agent is writing. And at the end of the day, like the silver bullet, one method that fits all the use cases for context compaction is maybe not
oh no,
right.
yeah, that's
Oh,
totally misguided. Because I'm agreeing with you because like if you look at like the prompt that's used for compaction for Codex because someone reverse engineered it, it's very much a prompt around analytical problem solving, like figure out what's been resolved, figure out what the goals are, keep track of intermediate steps. That's the right compaction algorithm for someone who's doing a long problem solving session with an agentic agent, but it's the wrong compaction algorithm if for like Sparky, where you're compacting a long transcription that includes text, where there you want to maybe keep track of identity, relationships, topic progressions. You're not trying to solve a problem always when you have a conversation. Maybe you're just doing what the uh, sociologists called phatic communion, which is that you're like connecting through people through speech. So
okay. And maybe
PHATIC.
building
That's
some intuition somewhere else and like
yeah, yeah. I mean, conversation can serve many purposes. It's not always an instrument. Um, so
I'm
yeah,
much
I
more
mean,
like interested in like
I think custom compaction is the future. We're just not there yet.
I think that like the LLM wiki idea that Karpati put us down, like to have the content compaction through like formalize an understanding of what's going on and keeping references of the thing you understood. It's maybe the direction where I see the content compaction building more intuition because every time you ask the system something, it restarts from scratch all the time. It only relies on your agents, Claude, whatever MD file you put it down there. So letting the system formalize this way to yeah, build their intuition and formalize their intuition in a way that we can even look and understand as human. So the interesting stuff of like creating and having the system maintaining a wiki of its own like context in this moment for like,
Yeah, well, this is,
of course, for
I
the
mean,
coding agent of a big application. That's
I guess compaction is just a special case of memory systems where we need to figure
yeah.
out what is the right structure we want to distill into. Like I have my own ways of operating with AIs which are very focused on certainty levels. So my default skill when I'm working with codecs is all about every time you make an assertion, state your confidence level around the assertion and then state grounding evidence and clearly distinguish, hypotheses, assumptions, like findings. And I also communicate with the AIs in that way where I have a set of shorthands that I use to tag all my statements based on my degree of certainty around them. So I don't know, to some extent, like a lot of
Yeah,
these
I
systems
really
feel
like it.
like,
You demoed your way of thinking and way of working with agents. Well, we probably would worth like making an episode about that. It's
yeah,
really clear the one.
I
I
think
know
a
you've
lot of
always
our,
been like interested in like giving like number and not sensation to this stuff. So yeah,
yeah, I think the way one thing that's occurred to me, we're just sort of jabbering on here, but just like one thought, one thing that's occurred to me recently is how much everyone uses these tools very differently because they're very flexible. So you hear someone say like, "Oh, agentic coding doesn't work," and then someone else is having amazing results with it, and in a way, it's not surprising because if agentic coding just means like using a computer, right? And someone says like, "Oh, using a computer doesn't work," and someone else is like using a computer and it does work. Well, like no surprise, it's a very open-ended tool. And like
yep. There's a
the way Bob,
spectrum of things that can happen.
the way Alice is using a computer might not be the way Frank is using a computer, and it, might be very differently served depending on their goals. So
Yeah,
I think that's especially true with these natural language-based interfaces because everyone's speaking English or Italian or whatever, but that doesn't mean they're actually thinking in the same way and using English
yeah.
to express the same degree of structure in their thought process.
And yeah, and then there's a too much focus on the details, too much focus on the tutorial part of the thing more than the understanding part of the thing. And it's like what are the ideas behind Pi I love more than others because it's more like in the understanding of the ideas more than in like how can I do this in the fastest way possible. No, it's just like how you understand how to use it. How is the way you don't write stuff and you only write the things you need. Like, yeah, again, suggest everybody to hear about a little bit more about the founder. And
Yeah.
usually, like, it's knowing the founder of a product is one of the best like signal for me to decide if I use a tool or not.
Yeah, no, he's a got like a lot of correct opinions and smart fellow. I think there's a paradox at the heart of Pi though. He probably speaks about it somewhere. Here's the paradox. Mario is, very opposed to slot PRs, and he's very in favor of, understanding what the hell you're doing. And I think he has some quote about like, reading every important, that's an important parentheses there, line of code carefully. S-
I know what you're
So,
gonna say right now. Oh my
right.
God.
So on the one hand, he's all about like manual transmission, like steer the vehicle, understand what you're doing. But then on the other hand, the architecture he's built by doing this is there exactly in order to enable not thinking in great detail about extensions and plugins and automatically generated features, right? So you could say there's a kind of hard, strict, like humanly understood core, which is there as a foundation to enable a kind of wild, mushy, hopefully, contained by
YOLO
TypeScript types.
mode.
Yeah, vibe coded
Yeah.
YOLO
There's
mode,
no
like
confirmation on
set of
anything.
like
Just
extensions. And
yeah.
I think that is a interesting contrast and probably one that we'll see a lot in future
Love
systems.
it. Yeah.
We're now at 30 minutes, bro, so we're like two times past
I know.
15. I
Yeah.
think we gotta go.
Yeah, the hardest thing is going to be making 15 minutes in reality. It's the only way we're going to make 15 minutes if we're going to prepare this and not make buona la prima. You're going to make buona la prima, you're going to let the
I
speed
I I
evolve
disagree, but
itself. It's always going to be like
I disagree, but we can figure
that.
that one out later. All right, I gotta go.
Okay. Bye, Alexis. See you next
Okay,
time.
bye bye.